Welcome along. We're doing a deep dive today into some of the latest thinking from Australian athletics. This is all stuff created specifically for you, our accredited track and field coaches.
That's right. We've pulled together insights from several recent articles. It covers quite a range, actually resisted sprints, planning for youth, hamstrings, lots of good stuff.
Yeah, a real mix. And our mission really is to pull out those key practical nuggets, things you can, take away and potentially use in your coaching almost straight away.
Exactly. It's about making these evidence-based strategies accessible and highlighting how they might inform your practice, enhance what you already do, and help your athletes across different events.
Okay, let's dive right in then. Resisted sprint training. It always sparks discussion, doesn't it? What's the core idea here, according to the article?
Well, at its simplest, it's sprinting while working against some kind of added load. Think sleds, maybe running uphill, or using resistance bands.
And the main goal?
Primarily, it's aimed at improving acceleration, especially those first, say, 20 meters, though it can have some impact on max velocity too.
How does it actually work? The mechanism.
The basic idea is that by making the athlete push or pull against resistance, you're training their ability to apply more force horizontally into the ground, that powerful push-off.
Right, building that drive phase power. Now, the article gets into specifics like velocity decrement and different load categories. Can you break that down a bit?
Sure. Velocity decrement is just a fancy way of saying how much slower the athlete runs because of the added resistance. It's usually expressed as a percentage reduction in speed compared to their unresisted speed.
Okay, so it quantifies the load's effect.
Precisely. And the classifications like light being less than 10% speed reduction, moderate 10-15%, heavy 15-30%, very heavy over 30%, they give coaches a framework, a way to gauge the intensity and think about the likely training effect.
And this is where the debate comes in, right, about the optimal load.
Exactly. Traditionally, the thinking was lighter loads were better, maybe less than 10% speed loss, or using a sled less than 10% of body weight, mainly to avoid messing up sprint technique.
That makes intuitive sense. Don't want them looking like they're pulling a truck.
Right. But more recent research, some mentioned in the article, is suggesting it might be more nuanced. Heavier loads, maybe even causing around 50% velocity reduction, might actually be better for developing peak power and boosting acceleration.
So heavier for acceleration, maybe lighter for top speed work.
That seems to be the emerging picture, yeah. One study on youth football players even found significant acceleration gains with really heavy loads, causing like a 75% speed reduction. So optimal really depends on what you're trying to achieve in that specific session or phase.
Which leads to the technique question. If you use heavy loads, surely it changes how they run.
It absolutely does, acutely anyway. You'll see more forward lean, longer ground contact times, maybe shorter strides. That's undeniable.
So how is that not detrimental?
Well, the thinking, supported by research like the Petracos review mentioned, is that these changes might not negatively impact their unresisted sprint technique in the long run. It's like a specific strength overload.
Ah, like lifting weights makes you stronger generally, which can transfer.
Kind of, yeah. And the article also highlights the contrast approach. That's where you pair a resisted sprint immediately with an unresisted one.
So do a heavy sled pull, then immediately sprint free.
Exactly. It seems to help translate that power gain from the resistance straight into faster, more efficient movement patterns. It helps bridge that potential gap.
That sounds very practical. Now, what about different athletes? You wouldn't load a young, developing sprinter the same way as an elite, surely.
No, definitely not. Individualization is key. For younger athletes or those newer to sprinting, the advice is generally to start lighter. Maybe use gentle hills instead of heavy sleds. The priority there is learning good mechanics.
Makes sense. Build the foundation first.
Right. Although that youth study does suggest moderate loads can be effective even for developing athletes, but you'd be cautious. For elites, you see more variation. Some programs stick to lighter loads. Others, like Asafa Powell apparently, used very heavy sleds.
So it depends on the athlete's history, their current strength, and what the coach observes.
Absolutely. Constant monitoring of technique and adaptation is crucial.
So if you had to give a concise takeaway on loading.
Aim for a load that definitely challenges their acceleration, makes them work, but still lets them maintain a reasonably good posture in a quick leg turnover. Often that might fall in the 10-30% body mass range for sleds, or maybe a 5-30% velocity decrement.
And the key is effort.
Maximum effort against the resistance. And aligning the load with your training goal for that day or week, Using a range of loads over time seems beneficial too.
Okay. What about distance? How far should these resisted sprints be?
They need to be pretty short because the main benefit is in that acceleration phase. So for pure acceleration, you're often looking at just 5 to 15, maybe 20 meters, probably with heavier loads.
And if you go longer?
You might extend it slightly, say 20, 40 meters, perhaps with lighter resistance like parachutes or very light sleds,
Okay.
if you're trying to influence the transition phase or even touch on max velocity mechanics. But honestly, unresisted or even assisted sprints are usually better for pure top speed.
So resist the part of the sprint you want to improve, basically.
Pretty much. Avoid really long resisted runs where they slow down significantly and it just becomes a slow, grinding effort. That's not productive for speed development.
And hills, where do they fit in?
Uphill sprints, maybe 10, 30 meters on a gentle slope like 3 to 7 degrees, are a great natural resistance tool. They inherently encourage good acceleration mechanics that forward lean, powerful drive.
Convenient too, no equipment needed.
Exactly. Good for groups, lower impact sometimes. Studies show they can be just as effective as sleds for improving acceleration, especially in team sports. Lots of great coaches have used hills for decades.
Okay, short bursts, high intensity. What about sets, reps, and crucially, rest?
Quality over quantity is the mantra here. With heavy resistance, maybe only 4 to 8 reps per set, lighter loads perhaps up to 8, 12. But you stop the set as soon as quality drops off, if they slow down noticeably or their form breaks down.
And how many sets?
Usually just 1 to 3 high-quality sets. The total amount of resisted sprinting in a session might be somewhere between, say, 140 and 300 meters, depending on the rep length and load.
And rest. Sounds like it needs to be long.
Absolutely. It's crucial for maintaining intensity. A rough guideline is maybe 1 to 2 minutes rest for every 10 meters sprinted, or per second of effort. So a 20-meter sprint might need 2 to 4 minutes rest between reps.
Longer for heavier loads.
Yes, definitely. And between sets, you're looking at maybe 5 to 10 minutes. The athlete should feel pretty much fully recovered before each rep. This is not conditioning work.
Got it. How often should coaches incorporate this? Weekly?
For noticeable gains, the research suggests needing it at least twice a week for a period of maybe 4 to 8 weeks. In practice, during an acceleration-focused block, 1 or 2 resisted sessions per week is common. Trying to do more than 2 heavy sessions a week is usually counterproductive.
And keep an eye on quality throughout.
Always. Timing reps, if possible, watching form closely. If performance drops, stop.
Okay, that's clear. Low reps, high quality, full recovery. How does this fit into the big picture, the annual plan or periodization?
Good question. The article lays it out quite logically. In the general prep phase, the off-season, you might use heavier resisted work, more often sleds, hills, building that strength and power base. Technique might be a bit looser.
Then as you get closer to competition,
In the specific prep phase, you likely reduce the resistance, lower the volume, and always integrate it with free sprinting. It's about transferring those strength gains into actual speed. Maybe use contrast training more.
and during the main competition season.
For pure sprinters, it's often reduced significantly or even cut out completely. The focus shifts to racing maintaining peak speed. If used, it might be very light resistance for potentiation, maybe occasional short hills, but very low volume.
And tapering.
Definitely remove heavy resisted work during the taper. Focus is high speed, low volume recovery.
So it's periodized like any other training stimulus. Build the capacity, then make it specific, then maintain.
Exactly. And you need to balance it with everything else. Weight room work, technical drills. If you're doing a heavy sled block, maybe back off the heavy lifting slightly, and vice versa. It's all part of the overall strength and speed plan.
And it evolves over an athlete's career, too.
Yeah, novices might do less heavy work initially. Developing athletes often respond well to distinct phases. Elites use it more strategically, perhaps to target a specific weakness.
The article also mentions different methods besides sleds and hills. Briefly, what else is there?
Sure. We mentioned weighted sleds, great for adjustable load, targeting horizontal force, good for 530 meters. Main drawback is potential technique change if too heavy. Hills, we've covered natural, good posture.
What about bands or parachutes?
Resistance bands or cords are accessible, good for small spaces, but harder to quantify the load. Parachutes add drag that increases with speed, so they load the later part of the sprint more. Useful maybe for speed endurance, but wind makes them unpredictable.
Weighted vests.
Vests add load directly to the body, keeping mechanics quite similar. But the amount of load is limited, maybe 5–10% body weight. Ankle weights generally aren't recommended to sprinting.
And the high-tech options.
Yeah, motorized devices like the 1080 Sprint offer precise control and data, but they're expensive and mostly found in elite setups. Then there are other things like tire towing, part resistance, sled pushes.
So lots of tools in the toolbox.
Pretty much. The key is choosing the right tool for the job, based on the goal, the athlete, and what you have available. Sleds and hills are often favored for that dry phase acceleration.
Okay, now the big comparison. Resisted versus unresisted sprinting. What are the key differences in outcomes?
Well, resisted work clearly helps acceleration, that initial burst, getting faster over 5, 10, 20 meters by improving force production. Its direct impact on maximum velocity is less clear. For top-end speed, free, unresisted sprinting is still king.
So you can't just do resisted sprints and expect to get faster overall.
Not necessarily, or at least maybe not more than just doing regular sprint training. One meta-analysis mentioned found that, on average, resisted sprint training didn't show significantly greater improvements in 530-meter times compared to just sprint training.
That's interesting. So it's not a magic bullet.
It seems not. Both methods work. Resisted sprinting is a valuable alternative or supplement, especially for targeting acceleration, but maybe not inherently superior across the board. The best results likely come from combining methods intelligently.
Using resisted work to build the force and unresisted to express the speed.
That's a good way to put it. Resisted work tackles the force end of the spectrum. Unresisted or assisted work hits the velocity end. You need both.
So the final verdict on resisted sprinting.
It's a valuable tool, particularly for boosting acceleration by enhancing force production. It's not a replacement for regular sprinting, but a powerful supplement. Combine it strategically with unresisted work, manage the load and recovery carefully, and periodize it appropriately. It definitely has its place.
Great summary. Okay, let's shift gears completely. Another article talks about reflection for coaches, especially after big events like the national championships. It introduces a framework. Good, better, how? Tell us about that.
Yeah, this is about making reflection a deliberate practice. It's a simple but really effective structure. Good is about acknowledging what went well, not just results, but maybe your planning, athlete support, managing your own energy levels.
Recognizing the positives.
Exactly. Then better is about identifying areas for growth, not beating yourself up, but thinking specifically, maybe communication felt rushed or handover wasn't smooth, or you could have managed post-race recovery better.
Okay, specific points for improvement.
And then how is the crucial action step? How will you address those better points next time? Create a checklist, chat with another coach, refine a process. It turns reflection into concrete planning.
It forces you to think forward, not just look back.
Precisely. The article makes the point that the best coaches are always learning, always refining. Making this a quick habit, maybe just 5 minutes after a meet, can make a big difference over time. And doing it with a peer or mentor adds another layer.
That's a really practical tool. Okay, next up, planning for youth athletes. This can be tricky, right? Applying adult models doesn't always work.
No, it really doesn't. Young athletes are developing, juggling school, other sports. It's complex. The article emphasizes getting the fundamentals right for long-term development, moving beyond just those beginner gains you see early on.
What are those fundamentals?
It highlights core training principles: progressive overload, specificity, variety, planned recovery, individualization. Basic stuff, but crucial to apply correctly for youth. It points coaches towards the Athletics Learning Center modules for more detail.
And periodization for kids. How should that look?
It needs to be much simpler and more flexible than for adults. Think shorter blocks, maybe 3 to 6 weeks, building towards key age-appropriate comps. But the main goals are steady progress, minimizing injury risk, and keeping it enjoyable. You have to work around growth spurts, exams, life stuff. It's a roadmap, not a rigid prescription.
Which leads naturally into monitoring them, managing their load.
Absolutely. A plan is only good if the athlete is adapting well. You need to track not just the work they do, volume, intensity, but how they're responding, physically, emotionally, developmentally.
How can coaches do that simply?
Simple tools work well. Session RPE, just asking, how hard was that out of 10?
Okay.
Weekly wellness checks, asking about sleep, energy, soreness, even just informal chats. Pairing that subjective feedback with objective things like tracking performance trends or basic fitness tests is ideal.
And watching for growth spurts.
Hugely important.
Yeah.
During peak height velocity, kids can become uncoordinated, more injury-prone. Training needs to adapt, maybe less intensity, more focus on movement quality, coordination, mobility. Don't just push through.
It relates to that fitness fatigue idea, right?
Exactly. Training builds fitness, but also creates fatigue. Performance is fitness minus fatigue. Too much load, too quickly, means fatigue masks the fitness gains and ups the injury risk. Monitoring helps you manage that balance, time the recovery rate.
So it's a constant feedback loop, plan, monitor, adjust.
That's the essence of good coaching with youth. And underpinning all this is the concept of long-term athlete development, or LTAD.
They're not mini adults.
Precisely. Their training needs to reflect their stage of growth, learning, and adaptation over years. The article touches on the risks of specializing too early burnout, overuse injuries.
So encourage sampling different events.
Generally, yes, especially early on. Build a broad skill base, physical literacy. Let them discover their strengths and passions. Delay specializing until they're physically and mentally ready. Keep the training to competition ratio favoring training and learning in the early stages.
It's about playing the long game.
Absolutely. Building athletes who stay in the sport and hopefully reach their potential when it matters most, not just chasing short-term junior results. It means aligning your plan with their biological age and maturity, not just their birthday.
No, okay, great principles for youth coaches. Now, let's tackle hamstrings. Always a hot topic in athletics. What are the key insights here?
The article really emphasizes understanding their function during running, beyond just bending the knee. They assist the glutes with hip extension. They act as brakes eccentrically to slow the leg down during the swing phase, and they help stabilize the pelvis.
So training needs to reflect all those roles.
Exactly. If you only train knee flexion, you're missing crucial parts of what they do at high speed.
And the article points out that most strains happen in that terminal swing phase. Why then?
It's a perfect storm, really. The hamstring, particularly the long head of biceps femoris, is maximally lengthened, hip flexed, knee extended. It's working incredibly hard eccentrically to decelerate that fast-moving lower leg just before impact.
A moment of high stretch, high speed, and high force.
Precisely. And if other muscles aren't doing their job properly, like weak glutes not contributing enough to hip extension or poor core control allowing the pelvis to tilt excessively, the hamstring gets overloaded.
So a hamstring problem might really be a glute problem or a core problem.
Often, yes. It's frequently compensating.
Right.
So coaches need to look beyond just hamstring strength. Assess glute activation, trunk stability, and overall sprint mechanics. Things like overstriding, slow heel recovery, or a very stiff upright torso can all put extra stress on the hamstrings.
What are the best practice recommendations for coaches then?
Train the hamstrings for those specific roles. Eccentric control, think Nordics, razor curls, RDLs, hip extension under load glute ham raises, sled work, and pelvic stability core exercises like dead bugs or Pallof presses.
But don't just train the hamstrings in isolation.
No, definitely strengthen the support crew.
Right.
Glutes for powerful hip extension, the core and obliques for solid pelvic control, and integrate it. Use drills that challenge sprint mechanics and trunk stability together. Strength needs to translate to technique.
And technique work itself is important.
Crucial. Efficient running mechanics reduce unnecessary load on the hamstrings. So drills like high-speed wicket runs are valuable. The article even suggests filming athletes to really analyze that terminal swing phase.
A really holistic view. Okay, let's switch to endurance. The article reviews insights from the world's best distance runners. What's a standout principle?
The overwhelming dominance of low-intensity training, or LIT. We're talking about 80% or even more of their total training volume being done at an easy conversational pace, well below lactate threshold.
80%? That seems huge. Why so much easy running?
It builds the aerobic engine. More mitochondria, better capillary networks, improved ability to use fat for fuel, better nervous system control. It allows them to handle huge overall training volumes without breaking down, building that massive foundation needed for the harder sessions.
So it's foundational, not junk miles.
Absolutely. Bill Bowerman's quote about meeting miles of foundation work comes to mind. It's especially crucial for developing youth runners, too, building that aerobic base deliberately. And LIT doesn't have to be boring. Elites vary terrain, might do strides, focus on technique during easy runs.
Interesting. The article also stresses personalized periodization.
Yes.
Oh.
Well, the basic seasonal rhythm, general prep, specific prep, competition transition exists. The art is tailoring it. It depends hugely on the athlete's event, their goals, and crucially, their training age.
Training age, not just how old they are.
No, how long they've been training seriously for their event. It often takes 8-10 years to reach a high international standard. Elite runners have earned the right to handle complex, high-intensity training through years of gradual development.
How does training change based on training age?
For someone with low training age, maybe a junior or someone new to the event, the focus is on exposure, building resilience, lots of LIT, variety. As training age increases, you can introduce more structure, classic periodization, race-specific work. For seasoned athletes, it becomes about precision, fine-tuning, simulating race demands very specifically.
So you can't rush the process.
Exactly. You coach the athlete in front of you, matching the plan to their developmental stage, not just your ambition for them.
And the third pillar for distance runners.
Smart load management. It's about consistency, staying healthy, building volume, gradually small weekly increases, structuring the week around key sessions with easy days for true recovery, using down weeks every 3-4 weeks to absorb training.
And things like double runs, soft surfaces.
Yes, tools to increase mileage safely or reduce impact, alternating hard and easy days. It's all about that rhythm of stress and recovery. Eliud Kipchoge is presented as a prime example: consistency, sensible progression, truly easy recovery runs.
High volume, personalized plans, smart loading. Got it. Finally, let's touch on attentional focus. The article calls it an essential coaching tool. What's the idea?
It's about the power of your cues, where you direct the athlete's attention. The big distinction is internal focus versus external focus.
Internal being.
Focusing on body parts or movements. Snap your knee, keep your hips tall.
And external.
Focusing on the effect of the movement on the environment or the outcome. Push the ground away, explode towards the finish line, throw the ball through the target.
And the research says external is generally better.
Consistently, yes. Across loads of studies, different skills, different levels, external focus tends to lead to smoother, more efficient, more powerful movements and better learning and retention.
Why does internal focus sometimes hinder performance?
It seems to disrupt the body's automatic control systems. Thinking consciously about specific body parts can make movement feel stiff, less coordinated, like thinking about your fingers when typing fast.
But coaches often use internal cues, don't they?
They do. One study found over 80% of cues in elite sprinters were internal. The article encourages coaches to consciously try shifting towards external cues whenever possible.
Give us some tips for creating good external cues.
Keep it simple. Less is more. Maybe just 1 or 2 cues at a time. Use powerful images or analogies that resonate. Run like you're chasing the bus. Explode like a rocket.
Make it vivid.
Yes, action verbs, tailored to the athlete's age and understanding. And timing matters cues are usually best given before or after a rep, not during the movement itself. You're guiding attention, not micromanaging limbs.
So fewer words, bigger images, right timing.
That's the essence. The goal is to build your own cue toolbox for different technical goals. Test them out, see what clicks with your athletes. The article provides examples, like changing quick ground contact to bounce off the track like it's hot lava.
Fantastic. It really highlights how much impact our communication can have.
Absolutely. It's a key part of the art and science of coaching.
Well, that's been a really rich discussion, covering so much ground from these Australian athletics articles. Resisted sprints, reflection, youth planning, hamstrings, distance running principles, and attentional focus.
Hopefully we've distilled some really practical, actionable insights for you, the coaches listening, that you can take back to your own environments.
We definitely recommend checking out the full articles and the linked resources on the Athletics Learning Center if any of these topics sparked particular interest.
And perhaps a final thought to leave you with. What's one specific principle or idea from today's discussion that you could consciously try out in your very next coaching session? How might you put that knowledge into action straight away?